From classrooms to the field, truth and laughter both revealed. Tune in for that special feel. Nampa School's always real. Welcome to Nampa, where dreams can grow. Matt and Tyler on the show. Welcome to Nampa, where dreams can grow. Matt and Tyler on the show. Welcome to Nampa, hear the beat. Join the podcast, take your seat.
All right, well, welcome back, everybody, to the Nampa School District Podcast. My name is Tyler Keefe. I
thought you forgot there for a second.
I almost did.
That was close.
And I'm the Digital Communications Specialist for the Nampa School District. And with me on my left, your center, and still the center of everybody's heart, is Mr. Matthew Sizemore.
Thank you. You almost forgot my name there, too.
I did. It's a day.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, thanks, Tyler. Good to be here, as always, for episode 26 of the Nampa School District.
Episode 26. And it's like your 1 year anniversary.
Yeah.
You surprised you made it this long?
Yeah, thanks, first off, for that. And yes, it's been a wild ride, awesome ride. And I couldn't think of a better guest to have for, I guess you can call it my 1 year anniversary or something like that, than the superintendent of the Nampa School District, Dr. Gregg Russell. Gregg, thank you so much for being on here with us.
Yeah, no, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you asking me to come on. And, I made it eventually. 26 episodes, but we're here.
We're here. The beginning of the year kind of started out kind of a little wonky, which we'll get to in a second. But, getting you in at the end of the year, I think is much better because we can focus on the positives.
Absolutely.
And,
absolutely. It's been a great year. Yeah,
it's been a really good year. As we made that video a couple weeks ago, hearing all the accomplishments have been crazy awesome, not crazy. But before we get going, there's a lot of people out there that don't know you, don't know your background. So kind of give us your quick elevator speech as who you are.
Yeah. So pretty much a local kid. I grew up in Idaho and was raised, not far from here. Went to Boise State for a teaching degree. Became a teacher, started teaching here in Nampa, and taught third grade. Loved it. Loved teaching young kids as an elementary school teacher. Became a principal, vice principal, a principal. I went over and worked at NNU for a couple of years, was a professor over there, and did a variety of things, and was teaching teachers at the time, and then came back to the Nampa School District as assistant superintendent, and was that for several years, and then became superintendent.
Gotcha. And this is your third full year now as superintendent, correct?
Yeah. Time's going by quick, but it's third full year, and really enjoying it.
Gotcha. So with that, your third full year, obviously, first two, you can talk if you want a little bit about those, but going into this year, and granted, it's only my first year, so it's normal to me, but the amount of changes that we saw, you can say better than anybody else, I'd say is uncommon. Is that about right?
Yeah. I think what we had to do a couple of years ago, I've been in the district a little over 20 years now. It's the most that we've had to do, at least in that time frame, and it is really unusual considering what happened with all of those changes.
Yeah. And we can go over some of those, of course. Going into the year, over the summer, we got a brand new bus company or started contracting with. Launched a 4-day student week. So Fridays, for the most part, off for students. Switched to a trimester system, closed 4 schools. But I thought, wow. Again, coming in, I just thought, this is normal. They just make changes like this all the time.
But Matt, there's one thing preceding all of those that I think we just forgot to put in our notes that I just remembered is we're coming off of COVID money.
Oh, yeah.
Which was really the precursor to all those things that you just mentioned.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm. There was 3 major things that happened. Tyler hit on one of them. So the federal stimulus dollars that the government had given out during COVID, those were ending. And that was, it was around $12 million that we were losing. And then the state had made a switch in the way they fund schools, moving from enrollment back to ADA, which is a $5.5 million loss. And then we had, for the last 10 years, experienced a decline in students. And when you had those 3 combined, we were looking at a large deficit. And so, I think one thing is to look at how difficult those changes were. The other perspective I sometimes like to look at is also that we knew about it and we were prepared for it, and we had a really strong plan on how to go forward and kind of handle those. But to your point, Matt, it's unprecedented to have those 3 major things kind of hit a district or hit an organization and have to make those type of changes that we had to do. But we were able to do it. And again, not easy, but they allowed us to move to where we need to as an organization and be a little bit stronger. And I think that this year kind of showed that.
So going into the year, then obviously with all those changes, it sounds like there was a good plan in place, which I was able to see. But what were your thoughts going into it? Were you worried or pretty confident knowing you had that plan?
Well, we were confident in knowing that we had to navigate some of those financial offices. You know, we thought really hard about what we need to do to make the changes to move the district through it. Coming into the year, though, we had never experienced with a busing situation, and you know, I think I shared that early in the year. Anybody that takes on busing, it's an incredible task, especially with what we had to do. Usually, you have about 18 months to find a bus contract and be able to implement that. And, you know, we had about 6-7 weeks before school started. And, you know, it kind of reminded me of a situation when I was a little bit younger. So I used to play basketball. I was a basketball player when I was younger. And my job, I was a point guard, which is, you know, you're the guy with the ball. And I played for a really strict coach. And yet, basically, I had 3 jobs. One is I had to guard the other guy. If you didn't guard, you didn't play.
Sure.
You had to take care of the ball. So if I turned the ball over to the other team, I didn't play. And the last thing is I had to get us into our plays. That was my primary job. And I remember I would play games, and you know, like basketball's a sport where the momentum is a huge impact on the outcome. Mm-hmm. You know, you're in a high school gym, and you got people cheering against you, the band's cheering against you, the cheerleaders are cheering against you, the parents are cheering against you, and there's things when things don't start going well. I remember one year we were playing a game, and it was a district game, and we were up at like 15 or 20 points. And I remember at that time thinking like, oh yeah, we're gonna win this one. There's no problem. Things didn't go well the last half of the game, and we ended up losing. And I remember walking off the court, and this is when like things were going bad. Like people were cheering against us. We couldn't score anything. Of course, everything they threw up went in. And I walked off the court, and I'm like, we led 30 of the 32 minutes, and our season's done. And I remember at the time I felt like you know, I wasn't doing the things I needed to do. I felt really disappointed in myself, actually. A couple years later, was in a similar situation. The game wasn't as important, but we were in the situation where, again, the momentum was against us. Things weren't going well. And I remember kind of slowing myself down and thinking, I got to do those 3 jobs. Like, I got to guard that one guy. I got to take care of the ball, and I got to get us into our plays. And I think that's what reminds me a little bit this school year, is because we had some things that didn't go the way we wanted. The momentum wasn't there for us. And I think I learned a lesson coming back that, you know, we need to focus on the things that we need to do. We got to take our time one step at a time, one issue at a time to be able to get us through that. And I think we were able to do that and get us able to refocus. And so after those first 5 or 6 weeks, getting us, you know, back and really trying to get us to focus back on the things that we need to do to benefit our kids. And I think we see the results of that.
And one of the, one of the things that, you know, I remember going into this year was the 4-day week. We're the largest district, go 4-day.
Yep.
The teacher in me, honestly, and I've shared this with you before, is I don't like the idea of the 4-day week. And the parent in me is like, I love the idea because I get that extra day. And then I saw it actually happen and how it actually worked, the positives we got out of it. You know, there's still a couple of negatives, if there always is with everything. Yeah. But kind of from your perspective, how did that 4-day switch end up for you?
Yeah, I think it was overall it was really positive. You know, one of the reasons we did that was so that we could be competitive in the job market, because hiring and finding teachers is not easy. There's major challenge across the country. There's a shortage of educators in education. And so that was one of the reasons we moved to it. And what we saw, that change initially when we rolled out, it was tough. I remember teachers coming to me and saying, these days are really long. And kids, you know, this is long for kids. But as we began to kind of get into the year and adjust a little bit, and teachers began to kind of get their feet on their ground, you know, then the positives started coming out. You know, they enjoyed having the work-life balance. They enjoyed having an opportunity to be able to have a little bit more time to hit all the subjects in their day. And what we saw is, you know, the benefits of that. Well, I think we'll talk about our data here at some point, but it took a little while though. And again, it's not perfect. I still think, you know, we made some changes. We're going to talk about it. We'll have a different release time for our elementary, and that was something that worked out. But a lot of the fears that we had maybe around, you know, when kids would care and those type of things, the stuff that we put in place, we're able to take care of that. And Overall, it was a really positive change. I think the fact that our data is better this year than it was last year is a real good testament to that. I think we'll have to make some adjustments again. I think you always have to do that. But yeah, I was proud of it. I think it was a good school year.
Yeah, and everything that I've seen social media wise about the 4-day, at the beginning, again, people didn't like it, but now we got the same people like, oh, that was actually a really good change. And the other change that we kind of had was switching from the old block system on 2 semesters for the secondary schools to the trimester system and going away from the block. So we have the kids every day. The thing I still remember going to that first Friday night football game, and one of the high school teachers I know, I flat out asked him, like, hey, what do you like about doing this now, doing the straight 6, tri-6, sorry. And they said, I love seeing my kids every single day. Yep. So kind of walk us through that and the positives that actually came out of it.
Yeah, again, we had to make that shift so we could use our FT more efficiently. We had been on the high school schedule for 20 years. That's a long time to be on a schedule, and it was a really Herculean effort to try to get off of that and move into it. And exactly what you said, Tyler, we saw initially staff, having to plan every day, having to do some of those things was a big adjustment for them. But the benefit was they saw their kids every day. In our old schedule, you saw kids every other day. And so there was some pros and cons to that. But overall, I think, again, once we kind of got used to that a little bit, and it took some weeks and months to kind of get into it, we saw some benefits of allowing kids to see that, and kids having that familiarity of seeing my kid or my teacher every day. And so yeah, some definitely advantages there. And again, we'll continue to work through some of those, and the time period of the period length that they saw their kids, that was an adjustment too, because we cut that back a little bit, and we're making a few slight adjustments to our our mentoring period this year, and so that we can have more frequency on that, because that's what we heard is we want to see our kids more consistently and benefit off of that.
So, Greg, going into, and you were just about to start talking about how we saw some great results for kids, whether it's test scores, graduation rates, all those things. I want to talk about those, but going in, what was your outlook, I guess you can say, on those types of things there going in, knowing that all these changes were going to take place?
Yeah, I think 2 things. One, so personally, I always have had really high expectations for myself. And I always hate to use excuses. I mean, I just never wanted to have an excuse. Yet I also know research well. I know how to run organizations well. And the history of running organizations through major changes, called second order change, there has to be some realistic expectations. So personally, for me, I expected us to do well. I think I expect us to do well all the time. But I also understood that there has to be those have to be tempered to a little bit to see how that was going to be. So it was a little of both. Personally, I wanted us to do well, but I also realized that with second order change, major changes like the ones that we did, that you can see an implementation dip. That is something that is real. That's something that research has talked about. And I was curious to see, were we going to see that, or were we going to be able to kind of focus, as I mentioned, and get ourselves back and do the things that we needed to do well. And I think we saw that. I mean, our results show that. You talk about our results. We have the highest reading scores that we've had in the Nampa School District. We actually tied it. We had 69% proficiency overall as a district. And when you take out, so we like our special ed and our ELL students, so we had some classes at 80, 85, some classes at 90% even. And so we were, I think, 1 or 2 points off a state average, and saw great growth from last year to this year, and really proud of those scores. Incredible job. And talking about our teachers, that focus, the things that we did was we got back to strong literacy practices. Being an old elementary teacher, I know what literacy needs to look like, and you need to have it's a very systematic approach, and getting kids back to understanding what their letter sounds, long vowels, short vowels, hour control vowels, sight words, vocabulary, fluency, focusing a reading block on those things every day. It got us the results that we did. And so it's just a huge testament to our staff. Our staff is incredible for them to be able to have those kind of changes at both our secondaries and our elementary schools, and to get their students back to focus, so that there isn't that distraction. There isn't that excuse. It was, our kids are here today. We have a job to make sure that they learn, and our staff was able to do that. And really, really proud of just what they've been through the last 2 years with changes. and this year, because they have every reason to say, oh, it was an implementation dip, or, we shouldn't be able to get the results that we were able to. So just really, really proud of them.
Well, and with that, you talk about resiliency, and you were sharing a story about a Nampa High kid wrestler, and kind of go through that, because that really is like, he didn't make excuses. He's like, hey, I'm going to take this and go forward. So kind of explain that to us.
It's such a really cool story. So we had a Nampa High wrestler, Coach Perales is our coach over there, and he kind of sent me an email and said, hey, there's this kid. His kid's name was Elijah, and this kid was, I think, just kind of like an example of what Nampa's about. A really talented wrestler, and this year he entered the year, and I believe he initially started broke his wrist. I think he had a wrist injury, a broken wrist, so he already has that against him. And then I think he ended up getting in a car accident, and then I think he got sick, just like natural flu. And this is like right before he wrestles. And then I think the day actually of his state wrestling, I think he had a seizure. So it's just like all these things going against him, and yet he was still so determined. He went out, and I think he finished 4th in state with all of that. And it was just like a testament to the resilience, as you mentioned. He was determined. He had worked so hard all year to achieve this goal, and he wasn't going to let anything stop him. And I think that's reflective of just our district in general. At least that's what we want to have our kids to have and our staff to have, is just that resilience and that focus that despite setbacks, we still can accomplish things. We don't need an excuse for that.
And another way to look kind of at the resiliency and overcoming obstacles is, we didn't even talk about, we closed 4 schools.
Yeah.
And one of the schools that closed, Centennial, that's where I started teaching. Loved it to death. Loved my time there. We closed it, and the staff had to go to other places, with the other schools as well. One of those staff members is Miss Molly York, who is now at Owyhee. Oh, yeah. And she ended up becoming the Idaho PTA Teacher of the Year this year. Yeah. So talk about overcoming obstacles, and then boom, she was focused, determined, and look where she got.
Yeah, I mean, Molly's an incredible story as well. Just to be able to be the the PTA Teacher of the Year, and just an example. I mean, she's one of hundreds in our district. That for that very thing could have had every reason to say, I can't be successful this year, or this wasn't the year, or I had to go to a new school. And that's a great reminder. We had numerous staff that had almost every school this year opened as a new school year. They had new kids, new staff, and new parents. And again, talking about unprecedented, that's something we hadn't had to do, because we did redraw boundaries. We had to do that as well. That was another major change. And so to see that again, the professionalism of our staff, and Molly's a great example of that, of I'm going to show up every day and I'm going to give of myself to make sure that my kids get better. It just makes me really proud.
Yeah, it was very cool to see and talk to Molly, and for myself, getting to talk to her, do a little story with her, is really easy to see how she's the PTA Teacher of the Year. The way she interacted with kids is very cool. I know we've had so many other stories with so many students, so many staff members that have been recognized. Is this, and you'd know better than anybody else, it seems to me like there's just so many great kids and staff out there. I mean, is this normal to have this many just standout students and staff every year?
Yeah, I think it is, in the sense that success in education can look a variety of ways. I think that's one of the things that we need to do a better job, is just saying that success is more than the test scores. Obviously, we talk about test scores, but success is really kids being able to demonstrate that in so many ways, whether that's through academics or through extracurricular and activities. And we had, again, state championships, both individually and team sports. Success is teachers, giving of themselves to better another person's life and getting rewards for that. And I see that often. So that's why I have the best job. I mean, I think I have the best job in the world, because I go into schools. I try to go in at least once a week to make it, and to sit down in classrooms, and I watch our teachers teach. I watch our kids learn. And I see these things all the time. And that's why I tell people, and whenever someone has questions about our schools, I'm just like, well, let's come in and let's just go watch. Just come there and sit in the classrooms. So to me, I expect that, because I see that. I see the greatness of our staff. I see what our kids are doing. And so when I see kids come back and our dance team wins state, I'm like, yeah, I expect that. When I see that a Teacher of the Year is nominated or wins an award, I'm like, yeah, I expect that, because I see that so many times. And when kids do well, our wrestler kid and just the others, Graduation's a great example of that too. Just every single kid that walks across that stage is a success. To make it through, and we just went through graduation season, makes you so proud. You hear the parents screaming and yelling in the stands, and so to me, yes, I think it's something I expect to see, and I'm really proud of it. Do you always get that public acknowledgement? Not always, but I think that's why I think I love the job so much, is because I get to see that every day.
Nice. Just a great year. Really great things that happen. I guess we can maybe look forward then to next year.
Yep.
What kind of things should any new initiatives or things that the public can expect?
Yeah, so not a lot of major new initiatives. What we had, there's probably one I'll talk about in a second, but for the most part, I remember going back to us, the things that we need to focus on. We've been focused on high reliability schools the last couple of years. And just for the community to know what that is basically it's educational research. So you look at the best research the last 30 or 40 years, and they have come up with key things that schools need to do to be successful. And those are things that we've asked our principals to look into and our staff to dive into, and a way of just tracking that. So I know I'm making progress towards those things. And those things include, student safety, making sure that our students feel safe and welcome in the schools, focusing on the curriculum that students need to make sure that we are teaching the curriculum, make sure that we're assessing the students and the learning. A lot of it is not rocket science, but it's important to make sure that you are staying focused on that, because there's so many things you can be unfocused on. It's called Stephen Covey. He's a leadership guru, and he talks about the whirlwind. Everybody has a whirlwind where that can distract you from things. I told you about, my earlier playing basketball, getting distracted by the crowd and getting nervous and, not doing the things I was supposed to do. That happens in everyday life all the time. So the key is to be able to get yourself focused. And HRS has allowed us to kind of have that focus, that we can block things out and just say, are we doing the things that we need to do to make sure our schools are being successful? And I think the last couple of years, we're starting to see the fruits of those labors now. Our ISAT scores have been up the last couple of years. We've seen really good growth over the last 2 years on those. Our reading scores are higher. Graduation rate is up. We're seeing successes on and off the field and courts and activities and, all of the things that we have for our kids. And so I think we're starting to see the fruits of those labors. So next year is going to continue those things. We're going to still continue to focus on high reliability schools and work on that. And one other thing that we are looking at doing is starting a magnet STEM school. A STEM program. That's something that we're going to develop next year. It will not open this fall. We're looking to open in the fall of 26, 27, but that's something that we are excited about, because STEM education is a very popular one. And we're looking at creating a program where students can learn about technology and engineering and some of those problem-solving skills in a very purposeful way in a school, and really trying to create a school that really challenges and pushes kids. That's something that we are hearing out there, is that, I want a spot for my kid to be challenged. I want a spot for my kid to be pushed. And we're going to start kind of creating an option for that in our district. And I think that's something that we're excited about too. So really focus on the things that got us strong here, focus on literacy, focus on high reliability schools. And then we are going to start working on trying to develop that STEM program. We do currently have a program in our district. It's a high school. It's been very successful there, but we haven't had a strong K-8 program. And we're looking at creating that magnet school for K-8 to kind of lead into that high school program.
Well, and with that, just the STEM side of it, and I don't want somebody listening to this to think that, that's just going to be a school for the higher achieving kids, the advanced kids. Because I can speak to it when my time with Sherman, we had our amazing kids who on paper aren't the top of the class kind of per se.
Yeah.
But when we brought in the STEM projects, I still remember this kid. His name's Jameson. He couldn't do fractions to save his life on paper. But then I said, hey, we're going to cut this wood because we're building a big model of Mars and stuff, and we had to do it. And I said, hey, can you go ahead and measure this? And I go, what's half this? Well, it's this. Okay, well, I need a third of this. And he just starts whipping all this stuff out. And I go, Jameson, you literally just did what I'm teaching in class. Well, this is different. I'm actually having to do it. I'm like, dude, it's like, come on, just do it on paper. But he knows it. So, I don't want people to think that, only the higher kids get it. It's really going to be for everybody.
Absolutely. It's a way of teaching, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think what you described was engaging teaching. And engaging teaching can bring out the most in any student. And it doesn't have to be just for a gifted student or anything like that. I think a lot of students are gifted. Every kid actually is gifted. They're all given gifts. What STEM education does is do exactly what you did. It provides a a real life challenging opportunity for kids to be able to experience that differently. So we're hopeful, and that's something that more information will come out as we begin to work towards that. But that's something that we're starting to work on.
And one other thing I want to mention with the HRS thing is a lot of people will say, "Oh, we're just drinking the HRS Kool-Aid." I've heard that from our staff and any staff listening that they'll openly admit it, I'm sure. And in between years 1 and 2 of my time in this job, is we were at the leadership retreat or whatever you want to call it. And I remember hearing the administrator say, "Okay, what are we going to learn this year? What's going to be the new initiative?" And then you get up there and you're like, "Hey, our study this year is the same as last year."
Yeah.
And I remember the room just kind of being crickets, like, "What? We're going to do the same thing." And then you talk about that consistency. And now we're starting to see the fruits of that labor and where it's coming in. And I'm sure tomorrow at the leadership thing, you're going to talk about that same thing is we still got to keep going. We got to keep working on it because we can always improve.
Yeah. And we could talk a lot about HRS. We could probably have a whole podcast around that. What's really important about it is, strong districts, strong school systems. They stay focused on the right work. They stay focused on key work. And I think that's what Highly Reliable Schools has allowed us to do, is to stay focused. I go back to my story again. When I was a point guard, I had to stay focused on my jobs. And when I didn't, the results weren't as strong. And we have so many things that can distract us from that. Highly Reliable Schools has allowed us to stay that focus, and we are going to continue to do that because we can continue to get better every year we can, and I expect us to try to get better every year. So nothing new on that. And again, could talk a long time around Highly Reliable Schools if we really wanted to, and the research behind it and all the components about it and the leading indicators and lagging indicators and quick data and all the stuff that, maybe other people don't want to hear. But to me, it's paid dividends in the fact that it shows like, where's our district going? This is where it's going. How are we monitoring where they're making good progress? We're going to use that system to be able to collect data to show whether we're making progress in the right areas and we're focusing our work in the right areas. And if we get distracted, it allows us to, almost like a mirror, can I look back and see, am I doing the things I need to do, and have some self-reflection on that.
Gotcha. Well, I know we put out a great video that we all made on kind of a farewell to staff, but anything you want to say to just students, parents, and staff on just the past year, and in order to say have a great summer and see you next year?
Yeah. I think if I was to say something to parents, I kind of started with story. Maybe I'll end with story.
Sure.
So this, again, I was a fairly young guy. I was probably in my 20s, and I remember I was with some fishing friends. We used to do a lot of fishing together, and there was an older friend here. He's about 10 years older than us, and he was more into his career. And he asked each of our friends like what we were studying in school, And I had a friend he was like a marketing major, and I had another friend who was doing business, and one friend was doing like into engineer. He asked what you did or what I was studying, and I said, well, I'm studying elementary ed. And he looked at me and said, so you just want to be a teacher? And I said, yeah, and at the time I didn't have I didn't get into it because he was older than me, but he almost made me feel like, well, you're just going to be a teacher. And this is why I think it's an important message, though, because to me, it was never just about being a teacher, though. It was always about investing in another person's life, investing in a kid. And I had people that did that for me, and I still remember how important it was when I had teachers that invested in me, and what it did for my life to give me a chance at being do something with my life. And so education's that's really powerful. That's why I'm really proud to be a teacher. That's why I'm really proud to be in education, because you invest in another human being, you give the gifts that you've been given, and you share them with another person. And I want our community to know that's what I expect out of all of our employees. In fact, when I meet with our new employees every year, I share that same testament, that my expectation for you is that you're going to come every day and you're going to give of yourself to better the life of those kids. And so whether you're in food nutrition services and you're making lunch so that kids can learn, if you're a paraprofessional and you're helping a teacher so that kids can learn, if you're a teacher, you're doing your lessons and you're doing your grading and you're dealing with the discipline so that kids can learn, have a better chance at the future. And same thing with all of the folks in our district. We have 1,800 employees, and that's what I expect of all of them, is to understand that's the purpose of why we come every day, is to better the lives of our kids. And that's what I want through the Nampa School District. I want that for all of our staff to know that. I want all of our parents to know that. So that next year, that's going to be our expectation as well. And, you know, we love your kids, and we can't wait to see them come back in the fall and, you know, start that process again with them.
Awesome. All right.
Well, Greg, Dr. Russell, sorry. One of the things I like to do as we end each podcast, I come up with just an ultimate random question that really has nothing to do with anything.
Shoot. Yeah.
So being, you know, you grew up here locally, but I know you're an Ohio guy at heart. You have a lot of Ohio fandoms with your sports teams.
Yeah.
So we're not going to talk about the Buckeyes because that'd be too easy of a question.
Yeah, we got an hour. We can go on with an hour on that.
So out of these three teams, which is going to win the championship first? The Reds, Browns, or Bengals?
Oh, geez.
Oh, that's
wow.
That should be an easy one.
It should be easy, huh?
Well, one of them I would assume should be easier.
Okay,
than
so
the
look,
others.
I mean, let's just go the Reds, small market, no money. It's baseball with no salary cap. You know, chance I'm going to give them 1 in 100. And I saw one championship in my lifetime, not expecting to see another one. So then you go with the Browns. The Browns haven't won since '64. They are a disaster. The quarterback room's a disaster right now. And I think they got rid of Nick Chubb this week. So there's no chance that they are going to be able to do that. So I think I got to go with Joe Burrow. Although the Bengals are 0-3 in Super Bowls in my lifetime. So, yeah. Thanks, Tyler. I was feeling good about things, and then you bring that up, and I'm like, okay, well, now I can expect another.
Let me throw a follow-up to that. Who do you think week 1 is going to be behind center for the Cleveland Browns?
Ooh.
I'm going to probably say I think they're going to go with Joe Flacco. I just think because he's the most experienced and he led them to the playoffs 2 years ago. Yeah, but your guess is probably as good as mine. I don't know how they can be in that situation that they are in, but they are.
Okay.
And the good news is not my responsibility,
Yes.
right? That's somebody else's, and I'm glad I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, what a draft that was for the Browns. That was an odd one.
They're always odd for the Browns.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Most things are, yeah. Jeez.
Matt, any lasting thoughts
Lasting? Probably not.
or final thoughts? I don't even know.
No, I mean, I just, I guess I'll say, Dr. Russell, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast today. You know, knowing you now for a year and being behind the scenes, it's been truly amazing for me in my first year in education to see what you and your entire team have been able to do, again, behind the scenes, things that parents don't see, students don't see, a lot of the staff around the schools don't see, and to see the amount of care that you and your administration, per se, that you have in has for these kids and for the betterment of the district is truly something amazing and inspirational. So it's so great to be and I'm not saying this to kiss up, I mean it. It's like really cool to see coming from a completely different background into education. It's been really just great to see how much the people behind the scenes care about these kids. And so thanks for everything you do and being on the podcast today, and hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate it. Tyler, thank you for the time, and I really appreciate you guys asking me to come.
All right.
Well, Matt, you do better at the outros than I do, so I'm going to let you take it away.
All right, everybody. This was episode 26 of the Nampa School District Podcast. Thank you to Dr. Gregg Russell, our district superintendent, for joining us. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.